We're live now. Thank you, Chair.
Right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Constitution and Members Development Committee. Normal council procedure rules will apply. All questions through the chair. If you wish to ask a question, please raise your hand and we'll sort that out. And please, no interruptions while members are speaking. This meeting is being live streamed. Can I remind all participants that their conduct should reflect this? We'll go straight into the meeting with item agenda 1, which is apologies for absence.
Thanks, Chair. We've got apologies from Councillor Hubbard, Councillor Saunders and Councillor Thompson. And Councillor Cooper's here substituting for Councillor Saunders today. Thanks, Chair.
Right, thank you. Agenda item 2, minutes of the last meeting, which was 23rd of October 2020. Can we agree them as a true record? Nobody's saying anything, so I'll take it as that's agreed. Declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations of interest for the meeting this afternoon? No? Nobody. Right. Okay,
No, Chair.
We'll go on to item number 4, which is the update of the council constitution. And this is going to be delivered, I believe, by you, Charlotte.
It is, Chair. Thank you. I will share the screen, which I think will be helpful because it's quite a detailed report. So to start with, for anybody who's watching as a member of the public, the Constitution is the document which determines and explains how the council will run its business in terms of decision making, how meetings will be convened and so on. It is a live document, so it is always something that we're looking to update to keep up to date with good practice. Recently, obviously, to manage the COVID situation in terms of virtual meetings. Minor amendments to things that I can deal with in my role as monitoring officer, things like typing errors. But anything that's significant is the business of this committee for consideration, discussion, and then needs to be approved by full council. So there are, I believe, 6 points which I'll go through today, which will be the subject of discussion, I think. And just to summarise, they are motions of no confidence, voting on appointments at committees, some provisions in relation to scrutiny chairs and membership, motions generally, a proposed notice of motion form, and timescales for amendments to motions. So I think, Chair, what I'll do, if it's acceptable to you, is take each item in turn, give an overview, and you for opening the floor up to debate for further discussion and questions. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's fine with me, Charlotte. Yeah.
Okay. So the first point is motions of no confidence, which is on the screen now. And this is a proposed amendment to the Constitution that was referred back to this committee for further exploration. It was referred back by full council. By way of background, the Constitution is currently silent on motions of no confidence. This doesn't mean that motions of no confidence can't be brought currently. They can be treated as a general motion, and they can be brought using the general provisions around motions that are already in the Constitution. But currently, the provisions around motions would preclude motions of no confidence insofar as they relate to the character or conduct of a member. They would be ruled invalid because there are certain prescriptions in the Constitution about what is a valid motion. Currently, if you bring something which talks about somebody's character or conduct, it's not allowed. So this, to me, points to the need to review the provisions on motions in general. And what I would ask today is that you think about, as a committee, recommending to council that the motions provisions around validity of motions are changed to take out the specific provisions that would prohibit motions that concern somebody's character or conduct. What would still be in the Constitution would be a prohibition on anything that's defamatory by way of a motion and anything that's vexatious. So that would be what I would suggest is a reasonable threshold around the conduct and character type motions that somebody might want to bring, and it would pave the way for any motions of no confidence to be brought. The reason for the specific provision around the motions of no confidence that's being suggested is to give quite specific guidance really to members around the issue of motions of no confidence, including circumstances when they might be brought. And that was something that council asked for us to look at more at this committee, to give guidance on circumstances when they might be appropriate. So thanks, Caroline, you've gone to the relevant bits of the report. So there is some provision here in this report, some suggestions around circumstances when behaviour is likely to lead to motions of no confidence. And this potentially could be included in the Constitution as a guide. There are also in the report some excerpts from the similar provisions in other councils' constitutions, which trust members have had the opportunity to read. All I would say about this before I suggest we open it for a debate, Chair, is that I would advise exercising caution about being too prescriptive around when it might be appropriate to bring a motion of no confidence, because if you are too prescriptive, you essentially fetter your discretion. Obviously, what's included here in the report is that there are examples of behaviour likely to lead to motions of no confidence, but not limited to these examples. So it's really a matter for the committee how much of this you want to accept and what you think is appropriate. Before I go back to you, Chair, what I would say is that if, as a committee, and then if council accept provisions on motions of no confidence, the impacts of them is varied depending on who it is that council is seeking to express no confidence in. In other words, if it's the mayor can't be removed by a motion of no confidence that's approved. The mayor is still the elected mayor. If it's an executive member, then it's up to the mayor to appoint or remove an executive member. I suppose it could be argued that the impact of a motion of no confidence in those circumstances then is political, it has political weight. In relation to committee chairs, however, you could have a motion of no confidence in a committee chair brought at a committee. It would be for that committee to vote on that, and then it would go back to council for approval. And if council approved the motion of no confidence in that committee chair, then that committee chair would be removed from that role. And the committee need to, well, the council would need to vote in a new chair. So that's about the impact of motions of no confidence. Chair, I'll come back to you if that's okay for further discussions. I wonder if members have comments on the guidance in here about circumstances when you might want to bring a motion of no confidence. I think you might be on mute, Chair.
Thanks, Charlotte. Right, we'll open it up to the committee. Does anybody have anything to say? Does anybody? I can only see half of you. I don't know why. So quite obviously, if you've got your hand up and I don't see it, just give me a shout. I can see Councillor Cooper straight away. Councillor Cooper, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to clarify Section E, continuing not attending committees. I'm assuming that adequate explanation would be someone who was ill and sent a substitute in their place, or someone who had no internet for IT issues. Those would be adequate explanations. Thank you, Chair.
Charlotte?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Cooper. I think that's an example of where it's difficult to give general guidance as to when you might bring motion of no confidence, because you were, as somebody who might think about bringing such a motion, you'd be dealing with your experience of a particular person in a particular scenario. So it would be looking at the scenario on its own merits. I think it would be up to the person bringing the motion to determine what they think is reasonable explanation, and that's where it becomes difficult in giving general guidance points, because it can be quite subjective. I think it's fair to say.
Thanks, Charlotte. Can I just say something? It does say continual non-attendance of committees. Well, you know, if your computer goes down, you might miss one meeting, but you'd get IT out to sort it out for you. So quite obviously, the same thing shouldn't happen again. So it's a bit difficult, really, to say. You know, you're gonna declare a motion of no confidence in somebody who's who's missed a meeting for a reason like that. I mean, it's difficult. It's difficult to put a sort of anything on it really as to what sort of rule you would bring up. I would think, you know, could that be sort of somebody at a committee meeting decides they're going to bring a vote of no confidence in somebody? Could that be sort of decided by the chair and the vice chair of that particular committee? Would that make it easier? Just a suggestion. Anybody? Nobody.
Chair, I've got my hand up.
Sorry, Denise, come on in.
Thank you. Just going on to that particular point, the continual non-attendance, there's already guidance, I think, in the Constitution generally about people's inability to attend meetings for a 6-month period, at which time they can be removed as a councillor. And I think if this bit is linked to that bit, then that would provide a reasonable kind of explanation. Because I would imagine that if somebody is unable to attend committees for any length of time because, for example, for illness or for some family circumstances, that would have been notified to somebody like Sylvia, in which case that information would have come back to the committee and that explanation would be there. So I don't think that's a big issue really in that sense. I think if we link it to those other elements and then we've got one procedure that will cover both the committees and their inability to attend anything. It just seems to me that that's the same thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks, Denise. I always thought that part you were referring to, that's in the Constitution, only really referred to council meetings. I thought there was something in, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, there was something in where if you didn't do so many council meetings in a 12-month period, then you were in trouble. But obviously, I haven't got the full Constitution here. I don't know. So perhaps you're right. Maybe we should align this that Caroline's trying to bring forward. You should align that to the part that's already in the Constitution, as you say. Councillor Hilawi.
Thank you, Chair. I really just would like to echo Charlotte's suggestion that these ideas are good, that we have a baseline on which we can make judgments about votes of no confidence and motions of no confidence. So I would support this idea that we're working on now. And I also agree that it needs to be open-ended enough to allow the flexibility that might need to be brought to bear on any particular situation. That's got good and bad points, hasn't it, to have that flexibility to pin things down. But I think legally and in practical terms, we need certain flexibilities, but we need certain limitations as well. And it's getting that balance, isn't it, so that we're not hamstrung by too many precise regulations, and yet we've got something to base a motion on. So I think what we've got is quite good, Charlotte. Do you feel confident that you've covered the legalities and that this is a good way forward based on other local authorities' information?
Chair, can I answer that? Before I answer the question, Chair, can I just point out Councillor Rathmell's had his hand up on the functionality in the system.
Yeah, I was going to ask him next because I knew he would have his hand up. I couldn't see him, but I knew.
Chair, to answer Hilawi's question, the first thing I would say to answer that is I think we've got provision in here that you would only be able to bring a motion of no confidence in relation to one individual in every municipal year. Is that right? Is it on there, Caroline? And am I confident that this covers the legalities? Cards on the table, if it was up to me, I would take out the examples here, because I think that potentially somebody who is thinking of bringing a motion of no confidence would seek advice from either myself or the deputy monitoring officers as to what would be reasonable, you know, how to word something. Yeah. And I think sometimes, whilst it says here that you've got this as a guide and it's not limiting you, some people would strictly adhere to this and not think beyond. So it's a personal preference. My preference would be to be silent on the reasons as to why you might bring a motion of no confidence, because sometimes these things can speak for themselves in a particular scenario. But I don't think there's any issue with them having with you having them there as a guide if it's the preference of members to do that.
Okay, thanks, Charlotte. Councillor Rathmell, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, I agree with Charlotte and everybody else that it probably be better steering away from the prescriptive nature. So
Yes.
can all of the examples not be substituted with a simple sentence that says votes of no confidence may be brought following consultation with the monitoring officer? And then that way you've got the knowledge and scope to make sure that people aren't being vexatious, aren't going for something that would be considered inappropriate. And they're all brought formally and in the correct manner, and then that way it tidies it up without us being prescriptive, and it sort of leaves the gates open. The only thing I would say, Charlotte, with regards to this, it says committee and scrutiny chairs, and you've pointed out there's very little right for redress towards exec members or the elected mayor. Therefore, is there not something that can be included in the constitution that means that they won't be heard at full council if they refuse to attend meetings? Because at the end of the day, scrutiny is important, OSB is important, and if they continually refuse to attend where they can answer questions and follow scrutiny, then surely there should be an opportunity there for some kind of action. I know it's slightly off point, but I just thought I'd ask it while we're on the subject.
Thank you, John. Charlotte?
The question of non-attendance at scrutiny by exec members, I think, be addressed by a complaint under the standards regime. But I think your question's a bit different from that, Councillor, isn't it? It's whether actually there is a teeth to votes of no confidence in the exec members and the mayor, and
standards means nothing really on paper at the moment until the government change the legislation. We know it's toothless, and if that's the only right to redress, then can there not be something included in the constitution that isn't contrary to any legislation that means they won't be heard until they've attended? So, for example, if Janet Thompson makes a request of a specific exec member or the elected mayor and it's continuously ignored, 3 requests or more, then they're not heard at full council, and instead the chair of full council has to explain as to why they're not to be heard. Doesn't mean they can't answer questions on the report, but they don't get to give their background necessarily.
Shall I answer the question?
You can, Charlotte, yes.
I'm mindful, Councillor Rathmell, of the legislation around executive and executive functions and the way that the Constitution takes its lead from the legislation. So it's not a question I can answer today. You know, I think I need to go away and have a bit more of a think about that, if that's acceptable to you, Chair.
Yes, that is, yeah.
It was slightly off point, so I do apologise, but I just thought I'd throw it out there.
Apology accepted. Anybody else want to say anything on this motions of no confidence? Anybody got their hands up? I can't see anybody. Are we going to vote to take these to full council one at a time, Charlotte? Or are we going to wait till you finish the whole 6?
It's up to you, Chair. I wonder if it might be more straightforward while we've just talked about it to vote on each one in turn.
Okay, we vote on each one. Is everybody in favour of passing this on to full council to be debated at, I don't know, maybe the next meeting, or maybe it's even, I don't know what the dates are, I can't remember. It might be even a meeting after.
Yeah,
well, that might be annual meeting, so it might even be the meeting after that. We might be talking about, I don't know, maybe June.
Is this subject to the removal of the examples? Because I think a few of us expressed
we'll
that
do.
were too prescriptive.
Yeah, we'll do what Councillor Hilawi said. I think the answer is to, if you want to bring a motion of no confidence against somebody, you first discuss it with the monitoring officer or the deputy monitoring officer, or somebody else of higher standing.
That makes sense.
Is that okay with everybody? So are we fully agreed? Are we all? I'll put my hand up. I'm agreed. John?
I'm agreed.
Yeah. Okay. Right, Charlotte, over to you for the next one.
Thank you, Chair. So the next point is about voting on appointments at committees. And Council asked this committee to look at the legal position concerning whether executive members can vote on scrutiny appointments and audit committee appointments, the chairing role. The Constitution provides that appointment of chairs takes place at the annual council meeting. We've done some research on this question. Can executive members vote on appointment of scrutiny chairs, which indicates that, save for where there's a pecuniary or prejudicial interest to declare on a member's part, all councillors should be in a position to vote on any matter at the council meeting, including the appointment of those chairs. We've also had discussions with the Tees Valley authorities who indicated that the appointments in their councils are determined by the whole council. So I haven't got a great deal more to say about that, Chair. I don't know whether there are any further questions or comments.
Right. Anybody want to say anything on this subject?
Yes, me, Chair.
That's
Councillor Rooney, sorry.
Councillor Rooney. Sorry, I should know your voice, shouldn't I, by now? Councillor Rooney, come on in, please.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, this was driven by me really because of the difficulties we had with the last AGM, and I just wanted everything to be really clear before we moved into the next one, so there was no further areas of disagreement. I think if the law is that, you know, we go to full council and everybody can vote, then that's accepted. I think that what kind of comes with this is the ability or the non-ability of executive members and the mayor to actually sit on either of those committees, whether it's a scrutiny or the audit committee. And I know that that's in the terms of reference for each of the committees themselves, but I'm not sure where else it appears in the Constitution, and it may be something to put in here. I'm not bothered either way, really. I just wanted this clarifying before we go in. And in terms of voting for it, I would like this sorted. I would like to be able to take this element before the AGM, if that's possible, just so that everybody's clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Charlotte, you got anything to say?
That's fine. Yeah, we can sort that out.
Right. Anybody else got anything to say?
Yes, Chair.
I can't see you, John. Have you got your hand up?
Yeah, I have. I did have.
Yeah.
No, I agree with Denise's comments there. It would be good if this could be brought before the next full count before the AGM, even if it's an add-on to as an extraordinary at the end of the next council meeting or something, just so it can get in there first to clear it up, because it was causing confusion last time. It makes it easier for everyone. I do agree. It would be good to just speed up the process and make everyone's life easier. And Alma's got her hand up, Chair.
Alma's got her hand up. Thank you very much. Charlotte, do you want to answer John, or shall we do Alma before you?
I haven't got anything to add, Chair. Thank you.
Right, okay. Alma, it's up to you. Alma, hello.
Thank you. I think another reason and justification for going down the road that we are, that all the council ought to be able to vote, is if that's happening in all the other areas of the Tees Valley, and if it's noted in the guidance that you mentioned on point 13 on the local authority, I think it's important that we should be in line with other areas, and we don't want to be different in this respect of operational aspects of the Constitution. So I think that's a strong argument in the favour of what we're trying to do as well.
Thank you, Councillor Hilawi. Anybody else got anything to say? No? No. So are we all agreed that if we can get this to a council meeting before the annual meeting, we pass this to a council meeting and ask for their decision on it on the night, which we would normally do?
Sorry, Chair, to interrupt. Can I just come in on one point?
Yes, you can, Denise, yeah.
Thank you. It's a point 18 on that section, and it's talking about every authority should consider taking a vote by secret ballot. Do we have the ability to do that?
You're asking me, Personally, I don't think we do, no, but Charlotte
I think
may know
Charlotte's going
something
to
different.
answer.
Charlotte?
Thank you, Chair. I was going to cover this on the next point, actually, because it's recommended in relation to scrutiny chairs that the appointments by secret ballot, but one would argue that if you're doing that for one role, you should do it for all. But yes, very good, Councillor Rooney, which I was going to raise. We haven't yet necessarily got the technology. Because we're meeting virtually, to do a secret ballot, we would need a voting app for all members to use, and obviously it needs to be trained on it. So I think probably that's a placeholder, as it were, for further work. Because you've got the ideal position there of a secret ballot being preferred, but we need to make sure that we can operationally do that.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Councillor
Charlotte.
Hiller?
I'll wait for you.
Councillor Hilawi, you want to come
Thank
back?
you. Is it not the case that on the new system of the ModGov that there are specifics now about being able to vote electronically, and does that not incorporate the secret ballot arrangement?
Personally, I've got no idea because I've had no training on it.
Well, we
so
had
I
some
don't
training
know.
yesterday, and I thought I understood. Well, I do know that there is an aspect of voting within that framework and on that platform. I thought it was about secret ballots as well. So that's only a matter of time, isn't it, before that could come in? And that's my understanding.
Yeah, the only thing about it is, you know, some of us haven't been trained, and some of us are going to be trained. So we don't really have a lot of time to practice it before we end up having to do it at a full council meeting. And to be quite honest with you, I would prefer not to do that until we've had a bit of, you know, we've tried it at a few other committee meetings first and see whether it works.
Through you, Chair, can I just come in there? At the minute,
Yes, you can.
we are trialing the voting app, and we've got we're testing it, and we've got the facility to test it till March to see if we can see if it works, if it's any good. And the other issue we've got at the minute is not all members have been trained on the Modern Gov app yet, so that's why we couldn't actually facilitate it at the minute.
Right.
Chair,
Chair, could I just come back? Sorry, John.
Yeah, go on, come back. Yeah.
I'm just simply saying that in a way, all I'm saying is that it's definitely in the pipelines to do that virtually. Okay, we're not trained, etc. I understand all that, but that is the possibility that exists actually.
Yeah. John Rathwell?
Yeah, just one point to come back on, point 20. And I get what this is targeting. It's the lack of experience of chairs. Following consultation with the chair of OSB, suggestions were made that role profiles are developed for scrutiny chairs, and when considering selecting or nominating a member be appointed as a scrutiny chair, a member should have 1 year's experience on the particular panel. Now, that in itself, there should be a degree of experience to be a chair of a scrutiny, but my only concern is, whilst it doesn't affect us annually as councillors, when we come to 2023, there could be a significant retirement of existing councillors, an overhaul of new councillors, and we could find ourselves in a position as an authority, or where we leave the authority in a position where there aren't sufficient number of experienced councillors that have sat on any of the scrutiny committees for 12 months or more. So could that not be changed to be more reflective? Because obviously, look at it at the moment, the political balance, independents, Labour, it's 50-50. The next election, it could be that we go back to how it used to be, where it was 8 and the rest were Labour, in which case there could be a number of new councillors brought forward with considerable life experience in particular fields that wouldn't actually be eligible to chair a committee, but that doesn't mean they haven't got the prerequisite background. But I do think there needs to be a consideration of their experience and knowledge, because that has been reflected at some of the committees. So I don't know. I think that one might be too limiting and defining, not first, just because it could be a negative impact for the authority in the long term. I don't know what anybody's thoughts are.
Thanks, John. Yeah, I tend to agree with you with that. But something that bothers me when it says you've had to have experience in OSB for a year. Does that mean for the last previous year? Because there'll probably be councillors in the council at the moment who've been on OSB 4 or 5 years ago and done maybe 2 or 3 years service on that. What are we taking? Are we taking back service, or are we taking just last year? It's debatable which one. It doesn't really fall down on one side or the other. Charlotte, have you got your thinking cap on?
I had a couple of points to make, if it's okay, Chair. The first was
Yes, go on.
about Councillor Halawi's point, and I would agree that we work towards being able to do electronic voting, secret ballots. I'm just a bit reluctant to suggest putting it in the Constitution as a prerequisite at this point when we haven't tested it. I think it's probably something that we can revisit fairly soon once we've tested, like Bernie said, once we've tested the system.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I meant actually, soon, yeah.
Yeah. And the other point about Councillor Rathmell's comments, I was going to come to actually this question of the role profiles for scrutiny chairs, because I do think that needs further work. And I also think that if we are putting in place role profiles, there needs to be some mechanism for members, groups perhaps, but obviously we've got quite a number of independents whose group arrangements are different from traditional political groups. How do you assess somebody's ability in the light of the role profile before any voting takes place on appointments? So I think for those reasons, as there are those questions, again, this is something that probably needs further work outside of the committee for us to come back with not only the refinement of the role profiles, but the question of how then operationally they're used in order to be able to assess somebody's suitability for the role.
Thanks, Charlotte. Councillor Cooper, I think you were next.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 2 comments to make. I'll start with item number 18, the method for selecting a chairs for each authority to decide for itself. However, every authority should consider taking a vote by secret ballot. Yeah, I would say let's consider it and reject it, because the public accuse us of being too secret as it is, and everything should be open and honest. I don't see any point for a secret ballot. Moving on to section 20, I believe that Councillor Rathmell's got it right, that we could find ourselves with not enough people experienced. I also don't understand why scrutiny chairs should be any different from any other chairs. Basically, for me, a chair follows an agenda and makes sure that meetings are run smoothly and in accordance with all procedures. So I don't see why a scrutiny chair should be any different. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Halawi, again.
Yes. Oh, again, don't you like me chipping in?
No,
Chair?
I like you. You know I like you loads.
No, I mean the fact I'm chipping in. I'm not worried about you personally
No,
liking me.
no,
No.
no.
Thank you. It's about the point of the actually, Councillor Cooper just mentioned it. So we put the profiles of scrutiny chairs, but I think that does need to be broadened out. So, for example, the chair of corporate parenting board, the chair of other formal committees, and if there are general principles that are in the profile development of the role, then I think that should be generic. Although there might be more specific aspects of those roles, if necessary, for particular groups, but I think we should have a generic basis on which the profile for chairs is written up and developed. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Halawi. Anybody else got anything to say?
Chair, can I say something?
Yes, you can. Is that Matthew?
Yeah, sorry, I have my hand up there. But
yeah, I can't see you, Matthew.
No, that's right.
Just shout out.
No, I just wanted to say, I think I'd just like to pick up on what Councillor Cooper said. Chairs of committees at the council, whether it's scrutiny chairs or any other chair, it is not just about chairing a meeting. You don't just turn up for a meeting once a month, chair it, and then walk away. It's perfectly reasonable for someone to be a good chair of a meeting and make sure it runs smoothly. That's fine. I expect that of all chairs. But the other expectation upon all other chairs of all committees, whatever it refers to, is to understand the topic, to research it, to read about it, to have an understanding of the wider issues and implications and policies around those areas. So when you chair a scrutiny panel, particularly a scrutiny panel, you need to be abreast of all of the relevant issues to do with that area. You should be assisting your officer in terms of the investigation and arranging for speakers, making sure we're looking at best practice to get the best possible recommendations. Corporate parenting, it's not a scrutiny panel, but you need to be well on top of children in care, issues to do with social care. You should be reading relevant journals and newspapers. You should be watching news output. You should be keeping up with national politics as well as local politics. being a chair of a panel is not simply turning up and chairing a meeting. I'm perfectly happy for members to be good at chairing panels, and that's a very important thing. But isn't the only thing that is important in terms of the role of a chair. So when we do say experience is relevant, and make sure that scrutiny chairs particularly get given particular emphasis in that respect, I think we need to be aware that there is a lot more to being a chair than just chairing a panel. The experience issue is an important one. We do have a lot of inexperienced chairs currently, and I think that in some cases has shown. It isn't the case that people who've never chaired a panel shouldn't ever be able to chair a panel. I started chairing a scrutiny panel a year after I got on the council, but I did wait a year because I did feel as I needed to understand how committees worked. And I think that's an important thing for members to do. And I think what we need to try and do is, when we're doing all these constitutional changes, we need to keep councillors informed of what's expected of them, so they understand the roles. They do attend the training where it's offered to them, so they get the experience of the training and understanding through that. And then subsequently, if they feel comfortable chairing a panel and putting their name forward, they should do so, but only then should they do so. Because it means that they feel comfortable and they can do as good a job as possible, and we get the best possible outcomes for the council.
Thank you, Councillor Stonery. Councillor Halawi.
Here to what Matthew said, I absolutely agree. And I think many aspects of what he was talking about will hopefully inevitably end up in the profile of a chair description. So I think we need to take account of all those ideas and even maybe add to them, because being a chair is a massive job. And there are so many aspects to it that we need to define in the profile. Will we work again looking at the profile description? Will we have an opportunity to chip into this? Will there be a basic one sent out that we can make contributions to develop?
Charlotte.
Thanks, Chair. I think that raises an important point, Councillor Halawi, because it might be useful to have a working group including members outside of the committee, so that before we bring things to committee in draft, we can discuss the draft proposals with a group of officers and members who can all have input into the discussion. Would that be something that the committee would support?
I would absolutely support that. Councillor Halawi.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I think it needs.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Right, I think that's agreed, Charlotte. Yeah. Right. Has anybody else got anything to say on this?
Yes, Chair. Through fear of being shot down, though, this one, I was speaking with a member of Democratic Services yesterday because I was looking at this report and looking at how other authorities do stuff. And it's not to do you out of a job, Councillor Hobson, but I noted that business meetings of full council in particular, are business meetings and an opportunity to scrutinise. And some authorities have it so that the largest opposition group hold the chair of full council, because it demonstrates a level of openness and transparency. Because, and I'll put my hand on my heart, we did the same ourselves. I did it. I know the independents did when Labour held the chair and all of the exec positions and the elected mayor and chairs of committees. When it came to full council, you felt that the chair, or it was perceived by the public as well, that the chair was somewhat biased to the individuals and limiting the opportunity to scrutinise, not necessarily the questions. And I've noticed that other authorities do it differently. I mean, is that an issue? Is that something that we could perhaps work on in the long term as a committee to see if that would actually provide public confidence? Because at the end of the day, business meetings an opportunity to scrutinise. And if it's always going to be the largest opposition group that hold the chair of a full council meeting, which is a business meeting, then nobody can cast the same criticism, public or member, that historically has gone before, which is there's a potential bias leaning of the chair. I'm not saying there is, I'm not saying there was, but you generally find that that's the public perception. So I just thought I'd throw that one out there.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Rathmell. Well, you know, if it was a dig at me, well, that's fair enough. But
It wasn't. That's what I said. Without through fear of being shot down or doing anyone out of a job, I'm not.
John,
It was.
I haven't got my gun with me today.
It was just. It was just looking at this.
Let me finish what I'm saying is, while I've been the chair of the council, I don't know how long, 2 years, I have tried to be very fair and open with everybody. I have always let people speak. I have no sort of way of dealing with. I'm an independent. I don't try to do away with questions that people from the Labour Party ask, or other independents, or the Conservatives. I have tried to be very open and fair with everything that I've done, and I don't really see any reason for changing that.
I just see the public perception aspect of openness and transparency with it being a business meeting. And that's the only reason I put it there.
Open and transparent than me. Nobody.
No, it's no criticism of yourself. It's just an observation of how other authorities work. Not every authority is the same.
We don't need to look at how other authorities work. We are Middlesbrough. We should be doing what we want.
Chair, can I come in there?
Yeah, come in, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's let's be absolutely honest as councillors here, that within all of these decisions, whether it's chairs of scrutiny panels or chairs of anything at all, there's always going to be politics involved.
Yeah.
And the bottom line is that the best we can do as a council, and I think the best we're trying to do with this document, is to have something in our constitution that says that people of ability and people with experience are best placed to chair panels and committees, because those are important roles that should be filled by people with ability and with experience. Whether or not those people are selected to do that is entirely up to the elected members of the authority. And it will be votes at the council to decide who does what on the basis of whoever gets elected here. At the minute, we're in overall control, so it can get a bit complicated. We saw the last AGM, for example, scrutiny panel chairs, usually it was the independents and the Conservatives voting together and picking a particular candidate. That's how politics works. That's what happened, and people got selected on that basis. When we were in control of the council, we elected Labour members to chair those panels because we had a majority, and that's how that worked. The bottom line is, I think the best we can do with this is get it in there that says ability and experience. Make sure people get as much training as possible so that when they get those jobs, if they don't have experience or haven't got a lot of skill in that area, they get training to help them with that. And we make sure that the people who do get selected have all the support they need to try and do those jobs as best they can. But I'm not convinced that this panel should be dictating that any particular group of people should be chairing any particular panel at any particular time.
Thank you, Councillor. And I must say, I totally agree with you. Right, anybody else got anything to say? Anybody at all?
I think Chair Councillor Waters wanting to speak. Is that right, Councillor Waters?
Yes, please. Thank you. No, personally right now, I agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Rathmell. Having watched previous council meetings, having watched the way things behaved previously, you as chair, John, are very different to the way the council's behaved before. So I think right now, I don't think anything will change. I think Labour are the biggest majority single group. You would still be chair. But going forward, if that were to change, I think it would be healthy that this were the case. What John's proposing will be the case.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. Anybody else got anything to say? Anybody got their hands up? No? Well, we're going to vote on this, voting on appointments at committees that Charlotte has put forward. We've had two things that say item 18 and item 20. Every other item 18 is saying take a vote by secret ballot, and item 20 is scrutiny chairs should have at least 1 year's experience. Can we?
Item 20, Chair, could I just ask if item 20 is also going to be broader than scrutiny chairs? Didn't we agree that? That would be a good idea. Okay.
Yeah. What I'm saying is, can we pass the item to be voted on at the next council meeting if we omit items 18 and 20 out and do some further work on them for later on? come with people's approval or not?
I'll second that.
Chair, can I just come in?
Yes, you can. Yes, come
Yeah,
on.
thank you. I think what was said earlier on is we may have an opportunity to do secret ballot, and if we're going to stay as we are in remote meetings, then we'll be working towards that. So something that says that every authority will work towards, or something a bit vaguer that says that our aspirations are going to be towards this, and then that would allow us to bring it in
That would
when
do, yeah. That would be fine.
everything
That
is
would be fine.
sorted. Yeah, thank you.
People agree with what Councillor Rooney has said? Right. Anything to say, Charlotte? Are we all right?
Chair, I was just looking at the end of the report, which is what the which summarises the decisions being asked for. And in relation to these 2 points, it was for a committee to note that all members of council to vote on appointment of committee chairs and members, and to endorse the recommendation for scrutiny chair role profiles. So the committee chair provision was for noting, but are you saying that you're endorsing the recommendations for role profiles with some
reservations about 18 and 20, which we could look at again? Would that be possible? Would that be fair?
Yeah, I think so. And could you add to that then that a working group is to do further work to develop that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's right.
Right.
That's right.
So we'll try again. Is everybody
So
agreeable?
can I just check, John? It's Alma. Could I just check? We haven't finalised number 20 yet, have we? We're voting on it to be modified and looked at. Right. Okay. Thanks very much.
We're going to look again. We're going to look again at items 18 and 20 with a view to bringing them forward if we need to in the future.
Thank you. Just to be absolutely clear. Thank you.
Okay. Is everybody agreeable with that?
Agreed.
No dissent anywhere? Agreed? Right. Thank you very much. Back to you, Charlotte.
Okay, thanks, Chair. The next points all relate to motions, and the first thing that we're looking at is an amendment of the notice period for motions. So what we're proposing is that the time for submitting motions be extended to 9 clear working days before the council meeting rather than 7. And the reason for this is outlined at paragraph 21, which is on the screen. It just allows more time for discussion with the monitoring officer and deputy monitoring officer, the section 151 officer, to make sure that the motions are in line with the constitution and the provisions and so on. I'll pause there for further discussion.
Right, thanks, Charlotte. Anybody got anything to say on this? Extending it to 9 clear working days? Does it give anybody any problems?
Yeah. Councillor Rooney.
Coming in, Councillor Rooney.
Yeah, I don't see any issues with this. Is there somewhere have I missed when a response will be received? I think there's something already in the Constitution. Is that going to be amended at all? Because if there is a concern about the motion and then it goes back to the person who's made the motion to tell them yes or no, when does that response have to be made by? Because that would allow for any changes as well.
Charlotte?
Chair, can I come back on that? I'm not sure that that's in the Constitution, Councillor Rooney. I think what we're saying is that as long as the motion is submitted on time, then further discussions about exactly how it's drafted can take place after that time.
You're quite happy with that, Denise?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't got the Constitution in front of me. I just seem to reflect that there was a response. It was to do with the timing of getting the motion in paper form and being put forward to be included in the papers, if I remember rightly.
Well, all we're proposing to do is change the time from 7 clear days to 9 clear days. We're not going to change the bit at the end where whoever's put the motion in gets the answer. That'll stay. If it's in the Constitution, it'll stay as it is now.
Okay, right, thanks, Chair. Thank you.
Right.
The current provision says written notice of a motion specifying the motion to be considered must be given to the monitoring officer at least 7 clear working days before the relevant council meeting and must be signed by the member or members giving the notice, with the exception of motions without notice and urgent motions. The motions will be open to public inspection. Members may accompany the proposed motions with an explanatory note setting out the background to the proposed motion.
Right, thanks, Charlotte.
I don't know whether that clears it up, Councillor Rooney, or not.
Yeah.
And then the question of whether a motion is eligible or not is a matter for the chair with advice from the monitoring officer. But obviously, with time to consider the motion with the monitoring officer and section 151 officer, every effort will be made to ensure that, if possible, it's within the requirements of the motions, if that's feasible.
That's fine,
Okay,
thank you.
that's fine. Anybody else got anything to say about the motions?
Yes, Chair. Councillor Rathmell.
Councillor Rathmell, come on in.
Paragraph 23, any known amendments. That's not really going to... Can that not be worded differently? Because obviously that isn't going to change anything with regards to amendments, because it says known amendments. Well, you could say you didn't know. Or is there going to be a requirement for further information to be submitted? Because on occasion, you see a motion contained within the papers that's been accepted, and actually a small part, a bit of text, but when the member actually speaks on the motion, it doesn't necessarily fall within what the aims are, what people are trying to achieve, and then that results in amendments on the night. So is there going to be a bit more description as to what it is they're trying to achieve with their motions? I mean, there's been a few recently with amendments and they weren't very descriptive, and then it's resulted in amendment after amendment. I mean, there was one a couple of years ago, there was one not so long ago. It happens. So is there anything we can put in there or within the form to include a bit more information of what it is the motion's trying to achieve? Because not every motion is straightforward and clear until the member starts to speak, and then that's when amendments crop up, and it causes the chair a headache.
But John, it doesn't say all amendments, it says any known amendments.
I appreciate that, Chair.
Suppose
I'm trying to make it easy.
Yeah, of course you can, Charlotte. Come on.
I was coming to that in a moment. I was trying to break it down, Councillor Rathmell, into each individual bit. So there is, like you say, there is scope there. Well, there is a proposal to change the provisions on amendments to motions as well as motions. What I was going to say is that I don't think that word known should be in there. I think the provision asking for 2 days notice of amendments to motions should apply to all amendments to motions. I don't think it needs to have the word known in there. I think it should apply to all amendments to motions. And I would suggest that rather than 2 working days prior to the council meeting, that should be 3 working days prior. And then by extension, and part of the reason Ian Rice is here, what we would propose also is that there is a specific provision in the Constitution in relation to motions that seek to amend the budget. And what we would say about that, I'll just look at what I've written down here, is that we include a specific provision that allows for provision that a motion to remove an amendment to the budget is submitted no later than 3 days before the council meeting, and it's submitted to the monitoring officer. And motions received after that deadline are only considered in exceptional circumstances with approval of the chair of council, section 151 officer, and the monitoring officer. I know, Ian, right, if that's okay with you, Chair, would like to say a few words about this, but this will lead to a lot more certainty around any proposed amendments to the budget, and provide a little bit more time really for the section 151 officer to look at any amendments with the proposer. So I'll stop talking now, Chair, and come back to you, because I think Ian would probably like to come in on
that.
With your permission, Chair, is that okay?
Yes, of course, yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, in relation to amendments to the budget, the dilemma we have here is the section 25 responsibility on the section 151 officer to state that the assumptions contained in any budget that is passed is legal, and that the budget balances and that it's capable of being implemented. And so it would be immensely helpful to us if we had those 3 working days before the meeting for amendments to the budget in order to be able to complete that work and therefore give our advice at the meeting so that members were able to vote in receipt of the Section 151 access advice. So I would really strongly support that in relation to the budget amendments, please. Obviously, as set out this year, all members and all groups of councillors have the facility to be in touch with me and my officers at any time ahead of the budget setting meeting in order to discuss proposed amendments or changes or understand what's in the budget. And that will continue, but it would help us a great deal to have a drop dead date on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Ian. Does that answer your question, Councillor Rathmell?
On the part Ian's looking at, and Charlotte referenced there, but if we were to remove the phrase any known amendments, then I would expect to see a requirement that on the member moving just an ordinary motion and nothing, not one relating to the budget, that there should be greater detail, because it makes it easier for all members to understand what it is they're trying to achieve with their motion, so that, and it helps the chair, because the chair can then accept it and deal with it before the meeting as well.
Can I just ask you a question, John?
Yeah.
Are you assuming that when it says any known amendments to motions, I really think that that's in there because of the budget meeting? I don't think it refers to any other motions that you or Albert or anybody else wants to do it as we would in a normal council meeting. I think the known amendments are just things that Ian wants for the budget meeting.
Yeah, that's what Ian wants, but I'm on about ordinary motions because this actual report refers to all motions. So Ian's is, I would take that as a standalone and expect the 3 working days. But ordinary motions, if we're going to limit it to 2 days in advance and remove the word known, then there needs to be significantly more detail from the member submitting the motion. That would be my argument. I see Charlotte's got a hand up, John.
Charlotte?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, the intention was here, Chair, that this refers to all motions and that the provision in relation to budget motions, amendments to the budget, was kind of encompassed within that. So the intention was that any amendments to any motion be submitted, in fact, 3, not 2 working days prior to the council meeting. And that's in the context of members seeing the proposed motion when they get the council papers, so they have an opportunity prior to the council meeting to digest the proposed motion and themselves to submit an amendment to that in writing in advance of the council meeting. And the intention there is that it avoids, I think, like Councillor Rathman has alluded to, some perhaps uncertainty and confusion around how the amendments are worded and whether they're valid actually in the council meeting. It focuses the mind perhaps of members who want to put in an amendment to the motion and gets them to put that down on paper 3 days before the council meeting.
Thanks, Charlotte. Anybody else got anything to say? Anything at all? Nobody? Right, so then what are we going to do now? Can we agree that the proposal for the motions that Charlotte has put forward, we change the 7 working days to 9 working days. Any known amendments we move to 3 working days, and we pass that to full council for judgment on at the next meeting that we can. Is everybody agreeable with that?
Chair.
John?
I mean, just reiterating, with regards to the budget, because members have so many briefings on it, an opportunity to approach Ian well in advance, 3 working days, I would consider that acceptable. Given that full council papers can be received 5 days in advance, extending that one to 3 days might not give members, depending on their work circumstances, personal life, opportunity to digest it in 2. So I would like to see that one as 2 days. So 3 and 2 respectively, if that's possible.
So You want nine working days for the first one, submitting motions.
That for motions across the board, 9 days, but
Right.
the budget amendments, 3 clear working days before the meeting, because we have
Right.
so many
That's right.
briefings,
Okay, right.
and then 2 for any other motions, for ordinary motions.
Chair,
Yes, Chair Charlotte. Sorry.
can I also suggest taking out the word known? I think it should be any amendments. I think that
Okay.
word known is unhelpful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else got anything to say on that? No? No? Right. Are we all agreed that we take this forward to full council for their judgment? As John said, we changed working days to 3 working days, 2 working days for any amendment, and 9 working days for submitting motions. Are we all clear?
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed.
Denise? Sorry,
Agreed,
what did
Chair.
you agreed? Everybody agree?
Agreed.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Agreed.
Okay. Right. Back to you, Charlotte.
Okay, last thing, this is fairly straightforward, and it's a proposed form that we've included with the report that we would suggest that members use when submitting a motion. And I think it's helpful as a pro forma, helpful again to focus the mind on the sorts of things that we would invite members to consider when they're proposing a motion, including, for example, discussions with the relevant service director about the implications of the motion, discussion with the council's finance experts, with legal services if appropriate. So suggesting that you would put to council that they approve the use of this form.
Thanks, Charlotte. Everybody agreeable with this form? Nobody going to say no? No?
That looks
Okay.
fine.
Right, okay. So we'll send that to
I think
full
it's really
council.
helpful to have a pro forma, Chair.
Okay. Right. So I think that's it for that item, Charlotte, is it not? We'll now go on to agenda item 5, which is the terms of reference verbal update. And I think it's yourself that's doing this again. Charlotte?
Yes, Chair, just bear with me while I get the papers. I'm going to have to ask for assistance from Bernie Carr about this one, Chair, because I'm rather taken by surprise, having not checked the agenda properly. Bernie, can you help me out with this one?
Yeah, I
Please.
think one of the I think one was a request for corporate health and safety to report direct to Corporate Affairs Committee. I think that was one of them. I'm trying to think what Sylvie was going to present. I think that was one that we were looking at. Has anybody got any views on that?
Yeah, I can come in, Chair, if that's okay. So
Yeah, that's fine.
At present, Corporate Health and Safety Committee is an advisory committee to council. It's a committee that operates in public and it provides advice to council, but in some respects it would seem appropriate, because of the nature of the work of Corporate Affairs and Audit Committee, that it becomes a working group of Corporate Affairs and Audit Committee, and that it isn't a committee that meets in public. It essentially forms a working group of Corporate Affairs and Audit Committee. Because this would involve a change of terms of reference of the Corporate Health and Safety Group, it would require permission of full council. So we'd have to put that forward to full council for approval. Obviously, it's probably useful to seek views at this point about whether that would be something that this committee would support. And I think in practical terms, what it avoids is potentially the overlap of responsibility. Some of the regulatory functionality of Health and Safety Committee is also covered by Corporate Affairs and Audit Committee. We've obviously got the Chair of Corporate Affairs and Audit Committee here today as well.
Thanks, Charlotte. Any comments on this? Anybody got anything to say? Councillor Rooney?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I didn't I think I've seen this somewhere before. I hadn't really appreciated it. Why would it go to corporate affairs and not straight to council? Why can't it be constituted anywhere? Because it's a statutory function, health and safety, isn't it? So it should have statutory force. Are we saying that it doesn't have that at the moment?
Charlotte?
Thanks, Councillor Rooney. No, I don't think that's what we're saying. I think that we're saying that there has, in practice, in practical terms, been some overlap about the work that the committee is trying to do in relation to the work that the Corporate Affairs and Audit Committee is trying to do. So an example of that would be around the Transporter Bridge. Both committees have been cited on that issue, but both committees have also been trying to do work around that issue. And I guess another option would be to clarify the terms of reference of the Health and Safety Committee as a separate piece of work and not link up the committee with Corporate Affairs. There are two options really, probably open for discussion.
Can I come back in there, Chair?
Of course you can, yeah.
Thank you. I think this needs discussing at health and safety, because that is, representative with the unions. So it's outside of the local authority members. So I would say that this needs a bit more thinking around and to understand just what that would mean in terms of decision making and statutory force. That's what I would like to see. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rooney. Anybody got anything else to say? I think John Rothman's got his hand up. I can't see him. John?
Yes, Chair. No, on that point, I would agree. Any change to a committee like that would need careful consideration. It's not just the terms of reference. It can result in a change in the political makeup of different committees. And I wouldn't, for example, at the moment, the Conservative group don't get a seat on Corporate Affairs and Audit, but as chair, there's a reoccurring open invite to any member who wishes to attend and to get the same opportunity after the committee members have asked questions to ask questions of officers. It's just when it comes to voting, and I wouldn't want to see anybody's ability to take part in any kind of meeting or scrutinise things to be diminished by moving things from one committee to another. I do think terms of reference as a whole could do with looking at for all committees and tidying up a bit more, becoming more relevant, and it might be a fitting opportunity to offer some education and training on terms of reference, because I've seen it myself in committee at committee level. More experienced councillors are aware of what terms of reference are and where they can be found. But you do see a lot of councillors, when the word terms of reference are mentioned, they're not sure what they are or where they are. So it could fall back on the previous point with regard to people's abilities on committees as chair or otherwise, and use it as another opportunity to show that up and strengthen it across the board. That's all I've got to say, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor. So, anybody else got anything to say? No? Well, the suggestion's been made by Councillor Rooney and endorsed by Councillor Rathmell that we send this back to the committee themselves to do a bit more work on and get something sorted out. Is everybody agreeable to that?
Agreed.
Agreed? Right,
Agreed,
thank you very much.
Chair.
Right, is there anything else, Bernie, as your second thing come to mind yet that Sylvia wanted you to
No,
present?
that's the only thing I could find.
Okay. Well, with that being that, that's the I don't have any more urgent items, so
Chair, could I have an item in any other business, please?
yes, you can. Go on.
Well, it's a two-dimensional aspect to the ability of elected members to be part of executive meetings. So as I recollect, previous to lockdown meetings, virtual meetings, we were able to go and attend executive meetings if there was an item of interest to us without having to submit questions in advance to have the right to attend. And I think it was based on custom and practice that if we had a question, it would be at the discretion of the chair of the exec to allow us to ask a question as elected members. However, now, with the virtual arrangement, we are not allowed to be part of the exec meeting unless we specifically submit questions in advance. So I've been refused permission to attend in the room, as it were, in the virtual room, and told that I might as well look at it on YouTube, when actually, you know, my thoughts were, well, maybe I'll have a question. And so now it seems to be that we have to always submit questions in order to be able to attend executive meetings. I'm not sure where that comes from. And then I've got another point I'd like to make.
Well, we'll ask Charlotte to answer your first point first. Charlotte?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor Halawi, you are quite right that any member is entitled to ask to attend executive meeting, as you would if you were in the room, you know, physically in the council building. So that will be the future arrangement. If anybody wants to attend the meeting, quite right, you might have a question impromptu. Please let Democratic Services know, and that will be facilitated.
Thank you.
That answer your question, Councillor Halawi?
Thank you. It does. I hope everybody's clear about that, because I've been refused, you know, access to exec meetings unless I submit a question. So that's great, Caroline. Charlotte,
you have a second point. Let's have your second
point.
Yes,
I do. I did ask some very pertinent questions on behalf of my residents in a previous exec meeting a couple of weeks ago, and the questions were answered. That was fine. However, when I scrutinised the minutes just to double check that my question had been recorded and that the answer was as I thought it was, I found that there was no record of that question, or two questions actually, or anybody else's questions on the exec. So when I questioned Democratic Services officers, they told me that the practice is that for the exec meetings, only the decisions on reports, etc., are recorded. So I wondered how, therefore, is that fair that other questions of great relevance to the reports that we're asking on behalf of our residents are not recorded? So could we look at the Constitution in those terms, please, and see if we could amend it? Thank you.
Charlotte, can you answer that?
Thanks, Chair. I'll try. Councillor Halawi, the minutes of meetings are in effect a legal record of the decision. So I think the answer flows from that point, which is that the minutes have to record not a verbatim record of what's said, but they have to record the information that's relevant to the decision. And in some respects, they can refer to the report if the discussion mirrors what's in the report. But if there are, and in this respect, I'm agreeing with you, if there are questions raised at the meeting, points raised at the meeting that are relevant as information that then comes into the decision making, then they need to go into the minutes. They need to be reflected and recorded in the minutes. So what I can do today is commit to work on that and look at how we can manage the situation. So we don't have a verbatim record, because I think that's unworkable. And then there's a scope, unless you have a transcript, the scope to miss something out. But what we can do is look to ensure that anything that's made by way of comment or a question that's raised that's relevant to the decision is recorded in the minutes.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thanks,
Chair,
Charlotte.
because no, I'm not asking for a verbatim report of a meeting. You know, I just want the main lines of argument to be clear, and that any aspects, as you say, that are pertinent, that are raised, are mentioned and given recognition. Thank you, Chair. I'm happy with that. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Halawi. Now then, Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Councillor Halawi on the first point. If, for instance, the executive had a meeting and weren't there, and we get an email following up saying that they made a decision, for instance, on the 16th of February, and they were talking about the local implementation plan, could we then have a link so that we can go to the local implementation plan and see what it is they've been talking about? Because if we don't pick up an email straight away, 5 days might not be long enough for us to ask any questions. So a simple link to the documents that they've been referring to would help. Thank you.
Charlotte?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, we can look into that. Yeah.
Thanks, Charlotte. Councillor Story, got your hand up?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I just had another item of any other business. I wanted to mention the last full council meeting. It was noticeable that the Facebook live stream had quite a lot of quite offensive comments being posted there, and a lot of significant, very negative, and borderline sort of actionable comments. Some really, really bad stuff was getting put on there. And I've got a real concern about the fact that we stream live on Facebook, because it is really difficult for officers to manage the process of deleting comments that are offensive or shouldn't be seen in public. And they have to take on a quite significant job in terms of doing that. There are other ways of streaming the meeting live. We can do it on YouTube, as we do with committees. It means that comments don't go on as the meeting is happening, but it is a live stream that people can watch, and then people can obviously view it the next day in any event on the screen, as they've been able to do for some time now. I just wondered if it would be useful if officers could perhaps have another look at our protocols in terms of how we do stream the full council, and I would like it to be considered that we no longer stream on Facebook on the basis that it's actually it's causing a problem for officers, but it's also not appropriate for elected members to be disparaged in that way publicly. And I think if we could look at that again and perhaps consider whether YouTube is a better site to stream live on, I think that would be for the best all round. But if we can look at that again, I'd appreciate you.
Thanks, Councillor Story. I agree with you. Charlotte, can you answer Councillor Story? Have we got anything sorted?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, it's been noted that there is a high volume of comments coming through on Facebook, which we can't turn off incidentally. So we have to manage them, and it can be a challenge at times. So we're already in discussions following the meeting last night about whether we can have the full council meetings going out on YouTube as an alternative.
That answer your question, Councillor Story?
Yeah, thanks. That's great.
Okay. Anybody else got any other business? Right, if not, we'll bring the meeting to a close. Thank you all for your attendance.
No, Chair.
What?
It was just on the 2 points. Alma's I totally agree with. And on Councillor Stories, I'm just wondering at how we arrived at the decision that only full council meetings go on Facebook Live. Because as it stands, all committees are on YouTube, as Councillor Story rightly said, and if anybody wants to share that onto their own elected member social media, they can, and they then become responsible for the comments. But I'm just wondering how we actually arrived at explicitly for full council it went on Facebook Live, because there's no reason as to why really it should have differed, because even if Middlesbrough Council are putting it out on their social media streams, YouTube can still be shared to Facebook and the link can still be shared to Facebook. Is there a particular request made by anyone or reason as to why we went down that route?
I don't know personally, John, but Charlotte might know. John, Charlotte, do you know?
Thanks, Chair. The what's the word I'm looking for? Meetings going out on Facebook, council meetings going out on Facebook was something that predated us going into lockdown and having virtual meetings. Broadcast was the word I was looking for. The broadcast of meetings on Facebook predated us going into lockdown. When we went into lockdown and then had to adopt a process where we had all meetings going out live, we identified that YouTube was a good vehicle for doing that for all meetings. But because we'd had council meetings already on Facebook, and probably that has a wider reach in terms of the general public who follow the council, we stuck with that practice. So we had the full council meetings going out on Facebook and all of the meetings going out on YouTube. But obviously the issues that have been raised about comments has to be weighed against perhaps the wider reach of the meeting going out on Facebook. And as you've said, Councillor Rathmell, there's always the possibility to put a link on the Facebook page to the YouTube page. So that's something that we'll look at.
Thanks, Charlotte.
Thanks.
Answer your question, John, is that all right?
Yeah.
Right, so anybody else got any other business? No, okay, so we'll close the meeting. Thank you all for your attendance. We've got down here that our next meeting is the 12th of March. I think that's still right, Caroline, isn't it? Nods ahead, yeah.
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, that's what it's down as the next one. Yeah, I realise it's quite close together now because this one was pushed back, so I'm not sure whether you want to make any changes to that, John, but obviously that's up to you. Sorry, Chair. Thank you.
So the next meeting is 12th of March. Councillor Higgins, you're waving at me.
I'm waving goodbye.
Oh.
Not just to you, John, to everybody.
So what, any favouritism on
Goodbye.
here? No favouritism. Bye. Bye, everybody. Thanks for your attendance.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.